Okay, so today is November 9th. It's Thursday. It's 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, so this is our time for Greek studies. Last week, we finished going over verses 6 through 10. This week, we'll start going through verses 11 to 15. I know that most of you probably haven't reached this lesson yet, and that's okay. Remember, a lot of the vocabulary repeats, so things we talk about in this lesson, even if you're on lesson 1 or lesson 2, the vocabulary we talk about here, comments I make and things like that, they'll apply to your lessons as well, so it's no big deal. And these courses, these live classes, I should say, are intended for anyone. So it doesn't matter what lesson you're on or what level you're at or how long you've been enrolled in Greek studies. The purpose of these classes is just to be helpful. But I should say that one of my goals in these classes is just to make these studies conversational for you. So it's not this thing on paper. It's not this isolated, lonely thing that you work on. It becomes conversational. You become comfortable hearing the words, talking about the lessons and things like that. It's good for you to develop a comfort with these studies. Okay, so that's another main goal of live classes. These live classes don't replace private study, though. They don't replace completing online tasks and assignments. So you've got to keep focused on your own work. That's your part of the deal, and then just make use of these live classes to go over things you've already studied, learn some new things you haven't studied yet, become comfortable with the subjects, ask questions, get some practice once in a while reading in Greek and things like that. So use both. Use the live class and the online lessons, and I think you'll get the best education possible. It's very efficient how it works. Okay, so that's what we're doing today, verses 11 to 15. And I said before, I recommend you just have a piece of paper or something handy to jot notes down on. It's good just to have a place to write your own thoughts as we go along. You might note some things that are interesting or something you didn't understand before. Even just to scribble it down real quick sometimes is helpful. So if you can have a piece of paper or a notebook available with a pen while we have these meetings, that's what I'd recommend. Okay, so Gospel of St. John, verses 11 to 15. Let me share my screen. Before I get going here, any questions about Greek studies? Any questions before I get going? If you don't have any, just write no, so I know that you're not in the midst of typing, like a 6-page question for me. Any questions about Greek studies before we get rolling here? No, looks good. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let me share my screen. 1 second. All right, so the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verses 11 to 15. Pay attention with me now. Let's chill with chat. We can chat later anyway. But 11 to 15. And like I said, I know that I don't think many of you have reached this lesson yet. This is the 3rd lesson in the course, so pay attention because a lot of this vocabulary will be helpful for you in earlier lessons. The other thing I want to say is maybe you've gotten ahead in Latin reading, and if you've done Latin reading and you're past lesson 3 in Latin reading, let me just ask you real quick. How many of you are in Latin reading and are past lesson 3? Give me a yes or no. How many of you have done lesson 3 in Latin reading? Lesson 3 in Latin reading. All right, so that's another thing that will help you. If you get going with Latin reading will help you with Greek translation, okay? All right, so let's look at verse 11 here. And again, we want to focus on reading. I'm not going to ask anyone to read today just because I want to work on this vocabulary. But like I said, have a piece of paper, have a pen with you, jot some things down. We'll talk about the vocab and so on. Let's make this time productive. So verse 11, what I'd like you to do quietly is just read that to yourself. Give a few seconds, read through that to yourself and see how you would read that. I'm not going to have anyone read it live here today. Think of how you'd read that. Okay, let's look at this first phrase now. This first phrase. The first word is ace. Ace, you see epsilon, iota, sigma, and you see a soft breathing mark. Ace, ta, idia. You see the iota at the beginning of the word. There's no breathing, and it's accented. Idia, idia. Don't think idiot. It's not the same word. Okay, sounds like it, but it's not. Ace ta idia, and then eilthen is the verb. Eilthen, eilthen. That's a lambda and a theta. Eilthen. So ace ta idia eilthen. In Latin, for those of you in Latin reading, in Latin, that phrase is in propria venit. In propria venit. Ace ta idia eilthen. Ace is a preposition. We've seen this before. Anybody know what ace means? Ace? Anybody know what ace means? I see no answers, so it looks like I'm doing the translation work today. Ace means to, or sometimes it can mean into, to or unto. To, ta idia. Ta idia means his own things. To his own things. And I'll just write this as we go. Ace to ta idia, his own things. And then we have eilthen. He came. So es ta idia, to his own things he came. And the reason why I say things there is because ta idia is neuter and plural. So the gender is neuter. So it's not talking about people, it's talking about things. To his own things or his own possessions he came. Why would it be proper to say that Jesus came to his own things? What do you think that means? What do you think that means? Jesus came to his own things. God made man, he is God, he made it. Yeah, good. All right. So he came to his own stuff, right? Like a man who is away for a time, or let's say a man who is away at war or lost at sea or something, and he comes back to his home. He comes back to his own things, right? To his own things, and then eilthen means he came. He came. Now this vocabulary is difficult. It's difficult to learn without the help of a lesson like we have in our Greek reading. And the reason why is because if you looked up eilthen in a dictionary, you would never find it, because it's actually a form, and you're going to see how wacky this is. It's actually a form of the verb erkomai. So you would have to know, and there's no way that you would know this, you would have to know to look up erkomai in a Greek dictionary to figure out what eilthen meant. So it's really not realistic to learn Greek using a dictionary. You really need a teacher who knows where the words come from. So es ta idia eilthen, to his own things, and remember things is in parentheses, he came. Kai, some of you should know what kai means. There's no excuse for that. What does kai mean? And, very good, okay? Kai hoi idioi. Now you'll know idioi here is another form of idia here. Idioi here is masculine and plural. You can see hoi idioi. So you got ta idia and hoi idioi. So this is masculine and plural. What do you think that means? If his own things is ta idia, what do you think hoi idioi means? It's the same word, but it's masculine and plural. What do you think it's referring to? His own what? It's masculine and plural. Not things. I just said ta idia is neuter. The reason why we say things is because it's neuter, right? Yeah, this is masculine. So it's not expressing the same idea. I think Cecilia's got it. And his own people, okay? It's masculine plural. His own men, right? That's the idea. His own men, auton. Anybody know what auton means? It's pronoun, auton. Him, very good. Okay. And his own, him, what does mean? You should know that. not, very good. Okay, so, and his own, and we can put men in parentheses. Him, not parelabon. Parelabon means did receive. In Latin, it's receperunt. So to his own things he came, and his own, perhaps men, him not did receive. And again, this word parelabon, you'd never find it in a dictionary because you'd have to know to look up paralambano. And there's just no way you would know that. Okay. So you really can't look up these verb forms in dictionaries. It's very difficult to learn Greek verb forms in Greek reading without a teacher, unless you do all the Greek grammar studies first, and that still wouldn't help you because these are irregular forms, okay? So you really need a teacher to help you with Greek, just for things like this, to say, no, you can't look that verb up because it comes from this verb, which looks totally different. That's how a teacher can help, okay? So verse 11, eis ta idia eothen, kai hoidioi auton u parelabon. To his own things he came, and his own him not did receive. That's verse 11. And you should know that if you study Latin. In propria venit. How does it go? In propria venit et sui eum non receperunt. That's how the Latin goes. Because I do my translation exercises, so I know my Latin. All right, verse 12. Verse 12, take a minute and read. This is a long one. Take a minute and read that to yourself. Think about how you would read it. Read through it yourself. And then you can check your pronunciation with mine. All right, verse 12. First phrase here. This first word, we see a rough breathing mark. See the breathing mark shaped like a C, right? And then an acute accent. So that first syllable is going to be accented. So it's like we're adding a letter H before this omicron. We're going to pronounce it as hosoi, 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 hosoi de elabon. Notice it's soft breathing with an accent, with an acute mark. Elabon auton. Hosoi de elabon auton. Now this verse here, this phrase in Latin, if you're studying Latin again, it's that wacky phrase, quote, quote, autem. Remember that in Latin, quote, quote, autem. What does quote, quote, autem mean for those of you studying Latin? Quote, quote, autem. It's a wacky phrase. Translating it can be confusing. Yeah, very good, Adel. However many, however, right? That's right, Cecilia. Good. Okay, so quote, quote, autem. So quote, quote, autem is basically this phrase right here, hosoi de. Okay, hosoi de. Hosoi means however many, hosoi, and then de means however, okay? However many, however. So hosoi is like quote, quote, and de like autem. And then we have elabon. Elabon means received. However many received him. However many received him. Edoken in Latin is dedit. What does dedit mean? Dedit. Let's see who does their translation exercises the right way. Dedit. Dedit means he gave. Good. All right. Edoken is he gave. Dedit eis. Edoken autois. Autois. We saw auton up here. We said him, right? That's singular. Auton is singular, him. But here autois is plural and it's dative. So you've got to get your grammar gears going here. It's dative and it's plural. Let me just ask any of you, how do we translate a dative case? And again, if you don't know these things, it's just because you haven't studied them yet. So just pay attention. If we have a noun or a pronoun in the dative case, how do we translate the dative case? What words do we use to translate the dative case? Very good, Adel. Nope, 2 or 4. Okay, 2 or 4. Now, Judah, you said his or he, but like you're thinking of the pronoun, which is right. Autois is a pronoun. In the singular, it means him, but this is plural, so it means them, and it's dative, so it means to them. Okay, to them. Who knows in Latin what the word is for to them in this sentence? That's a challenging question. I get to test the translation exercises, see who actually does them for mastery. Dedit eis. Very good, James. Okay, so we know James is doing his work here. Edoken autois. He gave to them exousian. Exousian. This squiggly crazy letter is a xi. It's pronounced like an X. Exousian. Exousian. Here we have an example of a special pair of vowels. That's a diphthong, omicron upsilon, exousian. The word exousian means power or authority. Exousian. In Latin, it's potestatem. Edocen autois exousian. He gave to them power, techna. Techna. In Latin, it's filios. What does that mean? Techna. Sons or children. Good. Techna. Techna. That's the Greek word for children or sons. And again, sons just means children. Don't get caught up with the gender, because like in our generation, people try to make such a big deal about gender, but in grammar, the masculine is just used anytime there's a mixed audience. So like, for example, if I come to our class meeting and I see a group of students and it's male and female students, I can just say, "Good morning, guys," and everyone knows what that means. I don't have to say, "Good morning, male students. Good morning, female." I don't have to make a distinction. We understand. And, we use the masculine as a general pronoun when there's a mixed crowd. Okay. So when we say sons, it doesn't just mean only males are able to be saved and Jesus only gives power to males. It just is it's a general pronoun or form that includes both genders. Yeah. Or every single time you speak, you have to say his or her. It's just silly. You just say his and it means both. Okay. All right. So he gave to them power, children, techna, children theou. What do you think techna theou means? Techna theou. Techna theou, filios Dei. Very good, James. Okay. Techna theou, techna means children or sons. Theou means of God. Theou here is in the genitive case. So when we change the case, if we have, I'll write this in the chat here. We have theos, we have God. If we have theou, it changes the meaning to of God. Okay. So here we have theou, of God, children of God. He gave to them power, children of God, genesthai. Now, when you look at this word genesthai, who can transliterate that for me? Who can write that in English letters? Who can transliterate genesthai? Very good, very good. Well, some of you are very good. Not a T, Henry. Not a T, Cecilia. Not a T. Look carefully at the letters. Genesthai. What letter do you notice in there? It's not a T, not a tau. What is that letter? Try that again. Genesthai. Good. Genesthai. Right. It's a theta. Good. Okay. Now, when you look at the transliterated words there in the chat, what do you notice? What do you recognize in that word? What do you recognize? And don't say Thai and talk about food. I know it's lunchtime. What do you recognize when you look at that word? Genesthai. If I asked you what English word might come from that Greek word, where would you begin? Genesthai. Genes. Okay, genes. That's good. General. No, that's not good, Henry, because you're sticking an R in there, which shows you it comes from a different word. Genesis. That's right. Generation. That's good. Genus. Kind of good. But Genesis, all right, Cecilia, Genesis, okay? That word genesthai is the verb to become or to be made. All right. It's where it's related to the word Genesis. Okay. So he gave to them power, children of God, genesthai, to become or to be made. Right. Tois is the article. So it's to those or to them. And then we have this word pisteusin. Oh, I'm sorry, pisteusin. Pisteusin. Transliterate that for me. Pisteusin. 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 Transliterate. Be careful. You know, don't make any mistakes. Take your time, look at it. I'd rather you take an extra couple seconds than write something wrong because you're hurrying. Don't rush. Take your time. Pisteusin. Very good. Okay? Pisteusin. No, James, I wasn't saying you did anything wrong. I was just encouraging the kids to take time. Pisteusin. Now, that beginning in Greek, we see this piste at the beginning. Piste. And that pisteo means to believe. Okay? Pisteo means I believe. Pisteusin means to those who believe. Pisteusin, who believe. To those who believe. And then we have this preposition ace, which we already saw back up here. What does that mean? I'm not going to help you with words I already told you. Ace means not in, no. Remember, ace ta'idia. Think about it. Just take your time. Yeah, two. Very good. Ace ta'idia means to his own. Now we have ace ta'onama, and you're going to have a number of possible translations, right? We have two. What else do we have? Think about the Latin preposition in. What are some possible translations? We obviously have in. We have to. What are some other options for in Latin? Nope, not through. That's per. We have in, we have to, we have into, unto, all those different options, okay? So to those who believe, ta'onoma. What anybody know what onoma means? Onoma. Very good. Name. That's right. Onoma means name. Good. Okay, so to those who believe, or to those believing in or into the name autu of him. Autu is genitive of him. So that's a long verse 12 there. Let's go back to the beginning. Hosoi. I don't know if you want me to quiz you or just tell you. If you don't know, this could take eternity. Hosoi, however many. De, however. Elabon, received. Auton, him. Edoken, he gave. Autois, to them. Exousian, what's that? Exousian, quick quiz. Power, very good. He gave to them power. Techna, what's techna? Sons, good. What's another possible translation of techna? Children, good. He gave to them power. Children, theou, what is theou? Don't write God. Don't write God. Don't you dare. It's genitive case of God. Children of God, and then genesthai. What is genesthai? He gave to them power, children of God, to become. Good. And remember there how I showed you by transliterating it, you can think about English words derived from it and helps you with translation, okay? Tois, to them, or to those. Pisteusin, what did I say that this stem piste means? What does that mean? What did I say? Piste means what? Check for brain activity here. Piste, who remembers? Not pistol, very good. I'm not going to give any credit, though, for negative answers, like it doesn't mean grass. That's true, but that's not a good answer. Piste. Oh, boy. Piste means believe. Believe. Piste, to believe. Okay? To those believing in the name of him, in his name. Okay, that's verse 12. All right. Let's move on to verse 13. And again, I know you're not going to learn all of this quickly. That's okay. That's why you've got lessons to study on your own so you can master it personally. But what I am interested in, like what I've been asking you, is once I do tell you something in a previous verse, I'd like to see if you're paying attention and remember it, 1 minute later, maybe, right? So let's go on here, and we'll just continue to add some vocab and review some vocab we've already seen. So hoy, what is hoy? Who knows what hoy is? You can't really give me a translation. Yeah, it could mean the, right? What can you tell me about its form? Would you say it's singular or plural? Singular or plural? Plural, yeah, it's plural, okay? It's still talking about the people he's talking about up here. As many as received him. That's the subject. As many as received him. The people who received him, he gave to them power to become sons of God, to those believing in his name. That's the subject. Those, or, the people. Okay, hoy. So he's continuing to talk about those same people. People who, uk ex haimaton. Uk. What does uk mean? I think some of you know this. Very easy. Not very good, Judah. James, no, you're jumping ahead to the next word. I'm talking about uk. Hoi uk. Those not ex haimaton. Ex haimaton. Ex means out. It's a preposition. That's what James was referring to there. Ex means out. And then haimaton. Haimaton. You can see that this is a diphthong. How do I know this is a diphthong? Give me two ways. Give me two ways that I can tell that that is a diphthong at the beginning of that word. There's two ways to tell. Let's see. How can I tell that alpha iota in that word haimaton is a diphthong? How can I tell? Two ways. The breath mark is second. All right, hold on. The breath mark is second. That's definitely one of the ways, right? The breathing mark is over the second vowel. That shows me that they're together. Search it up. Now you sound like my kids. Search it up. No, there's another way to tell. And it's an obvious way that you're going to be embarrassed to hear when I tell you. The first way is you can see the breathing mark over the second vowel. What's the second way to know that this is a diphthong? What's the second way we can know? Silence. No, because you can memorize it. You memorize the diphthongs, right? You learn them in the grammar. So, yeah, you should kick yourselves. Turn off your camera, kick yourself, and come back. All right, so you can just memorize the diphthongs, right? So I can look at that and I can recognize it because I know it's a diphthong from grammar. But I can also be reminded that it's a diphthong because of the breathing mark being over the second vowel, all right? So those not out of, and then this haimaton, none of you know what this word means. How about this? I know James already said blood, but he's just pulling Latin knowledge or previous Greek knowledge. What I'd like you to do is carefully transliterate that word for me. Haimaton. Transliterate it. Turn it into English letters. And be careful. Pay attention to the symbols. Transliterate it. Very good. Very good. You surprised me with that one. That's good. Haimaton. Good. Okay. Now, really, for most of you, that's where you're at in your Greek study. You're really, being able to read it being able to transliterate it. That's really the test of where you're at right now. Just getting started, learning to read the language. So that's good. If you can do the transliteration, that's good. Okay. Haimaton, it means blood. It means blood. Now, in English, we might see a word like, I'll give you a word where maybe you've heard this, maybe not. Hemoglobin. You may have heard hemoglobin, hematology. You can see these words in English are derived from hema, right? Or I should say haima. Haven't heard of either? Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but that's actually English language. So, and this is, but it's a good point. Take this as some encouragement. When you study a foreign language like Latin or Greek, sometimes you get discouraged because you just don't know. You just don't know the vocabulary of the Latin and Greek, right? And you feel like I'm so dumb. I don't know any The truth is, I can ask you English words that you also don't know. That's just how vocabulary works. If you go into a new place, if you go into a new situation, if you start a new subject and study, you're going to meet all kinds of new words. Learning vocabulary is just part of learning. So when we have a Latin lesson, a Greek lesson, and you don't know vocabulary, you also don't know English vocabulary, right? That's just how language is. We always have to keep building our vocabulary. That's why in all of our courses, in all of our assignments and most of the courses, I always ask you, what new words have you found in this lesson, right? I ask you to make a list of words you've never seen before and go look up their definitions. That's why, because that's part of learning. Part of learning is just building your vocabulary, okay? So hemoglobin, hematology, I could probably think of more, but those are words derived from haimaton, which means of bloods. And that's a weird translation. We talked about that in Latin class. Of bloods. Haimaton is bloods, okay? Who not of bloods. The Greek word for blood is actually haima. Haima, that's blood. Okay, haimaton is plural. So out of bloods. And then we have ude. Ude in Latin is neque. What does ude mean? It's like neque in Latin. Anybody know? Ude, neither. Very good. So uk means not, out of bloods, neither ek thelematos. Ek thelematos. Okay, grammar question that you have no excuse not to answer because I think it's pretty reasonable. Here we see X. Here we see ek. They're the same word. Why is there a difference? Why is this X and this ek? Who can tell me? The very simple reason. They are not different cases. The second letter, I don't know what that means. Why is one written X and another written ek? What's the super rule for all language? We've talked about it in like every class we discuss. What's the super rule for all decisions in language? Euphony, very good. That's right, euphony. James can't spell it, but he has the right word. It's spelled like euphony, not euphany. Okay, euphony. All right, euphony, good. What you see here, pay attention, you have the preposition followed by a rough breathing, right? Followed by rough breathing. So the X, ha is easy to pronounce. The kappa here and ek, and you've got to be careful. This is like a test of how careful your pronunciation is. You can't move from a kappa to a breathing because the kappa is breathless. So that's very awkward. So they use X in front of the breathing mark, and then ek is the normal form of the preposition. Okay, so ek, and then we have thelematos. 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 That means of the will. We had voluntate in Latin, thelematos here in Greek. Thelema is the Greek word for the will. Okay. What were you learning about this morning, James? Was just learning about that this morning. What's that? Let me know what you were learning about if it relates to this, unless you're like talking about potato chips or something like that. All right, so those not out of bloods, neither out of the will, the lematos, and then we have sarkos. Transliterate sarkos for me. Transliterate sarkos. Sarkos. Kappa and kappa, yeah. It's actually xi and kappa here. Sarkos, very good. Okay. You'll see this in English words one day. Anybody know what a sarcophagus is? Anybody know what a sarcophagus is? I'm not going to tell you. And search it up is not an acceptable answer. Anybody know what a sarcophagus is? No? Okay, well, that's a good challenge for you. Go, not now. Very good, Henry. A burial coffin, okay? Sarkos means the flesh, all right? Sarkos means the flesh. So neither of the will of the flesh, ude, neither ek thelematos, it's the same phrase, ude ek thelematos, we just read ude ek thelematos, same phrase, ude ek thelematos andros. Transliterate andros for me, andros. Transliterate andros. Very good. Okay. Andros. Andros means of man. Of man. So neither of the will of man. And notice there's two different words. We already learned another word for man. Anybody know what it is? I don't know what sordina means. That's not the word for man. Andros is man. And we've learned another word for man. Anthropos. Very good, Henry. So andros and anthropos, two different words that mean man. Now, when you're doing translation work, this is something that you should pay attention for, okay? Because you can see that St. John, when he's writing this in Greek, he knows the word anthropos. He already used it, right? He already used it in this gospel. He used it in a previous verse. He knows the word anthropos, which means man, but here he uses andros. And anytime you see that in a language, especially these ancient languages, when you see that there's two words and they appear to have similar meanings, not necessarily the same, but similar, you should pay special attention there to ask, okay, so why would he choose this word over that word? Because there may be some importance in interpreting and translating, okay? So he doesn't say of the will of man and use anthropou, which would be the genitive form of anthropos. He uses andros, okay, of the will of man. So that's sort of a private little challenge there for you to one day figure out. Why would they use a different word like that? Is there any significance of that different word? Okay. So verse 13 so far. Who, not of bloods, neither of the will of the flesh, neither of the will of man. Okay. Allah. Who knows what Allah means? And we're not talking about Muslim Allah. We're talking about Greek Allah. What does Allah mean? It means but. Very good. Okay. B-U-T, one T, but. Allah, but. It's a conjunction. Ektheu. Or I'm sorry, ektheu. Ektheu. We've already seen ek, so you have no excuse to not know what ek means. We've translated it several times already. What does ektheu mean? Out of God. Very good, Henry. Ektheu. Notice here we've got three vowels all in a row. We've got 3 vowels in a row here. So for pronunciation, why would I not say ek, the, a, u? The, a, u. Why wouldn't I say the, a, u? The, a, u. That's not right. Why not? The, a, u. It's a diphthong. What's a diphthong? Got 3 vowels there. How do I know what's what? And how do you know that? So Henry, James, Judah, Cecilia all said "oo" is a diphthong. How do you know that? 2 ways that you can know that. You can memorize it. Very good. That's right. What's the other way? How also can I know that there's a diphthong involved here? There is no breathing mark. The accent. Yeah, that's an accent. Circumflex accent. What about the accent? Very good, James. The circumflex accent is on the second vowel, right? So I can see that even though there's 3 vowels here, there's not 3 different syllables. It's not the, a, u. It's the, u. The, u. These 2 vowels are kept together. They're a diphthong. All right. So out of God, and then we have this big mess of letters. Take a minute and try to transliterate that for me. It's a challenging one. Try to transliterate that. And if you don't know what transliterate means, it just means look at the Greek letters and write equivalent English letters for those Greek letters. It helps you to see the word a little more clearly. So egenetheson. Yep, that's good. Egenetheson. Egenetheson. Now, up above we saw genesthai, right? We saw genesthai up above. What do you notice about egenetheson? What do you notice about egenetheson? Egenetheson. Yeah, you notice that little bit of gen, right? That stem gen. Okay, what did genesthai mean? Tekna theu genesthai. What did genesthai mean? Anybody remember? Anybody remember what genesthai meant? He gave them power, sons of God, genesthai, to become. Very good. All right, we talked about how that gen, right, in the stem there relates to Genesis, right, to become, to be made. And here we have egenetheson, which is another verb form related to that same stem. Related to the same stem, it means to be born, okay? To be born. Those who not of bloods, neither of the will of the flesh, neither of the will of man, but of God have been born. Okay? And that's what the idea means, to be born again. It means to be born of God, whatever in the world that means, right? Whatever this means, he gave them power to become children of God, and that means to be born of God, whatever that means, right? So if you're studying this, you should be jotting down these questions, like what in the world does it mean to be born of God? Okay, that's verse 13. So good. So we got through 3 verses. I don't know that we want to do much more here because verse 14 is long. It'll probably take us more time than we have. Let's use a few minutes just to go back over this. Now, one thing I want you to make sure that you see is that this is all really just a matter of vocabulary. That's why the Greek reading course is so helpful, and why I tell you to focus on Greek reading rather than waste a lot of time when you're beginning with Greek grammar. Greek reading gives you lots of vocabulary, and it sort of gives you stuff to work with in grammar. If you try to get into grammar without doing any reading, you just don't even know what you're reading about. So focus on the Greek reading, use your lessons. There's no easier way to learn it than the way that we study it in the academy with our lessons. You're not going to be able to look these words up in dictionaries. That's actually pretty complicated, as I showed you before. So the lessons make it as easy as possible, and just focus on Greek reading for now. Most of you are still getting comfortable with reading the language, which is a big deal. These transliteration exercises in the lessons will be a good challenge for some of you. You still are just learning the letters and things like that. But then the next thing, after you're able to read it, after you're able to transliterate it, the next thing really is just learning vocabulary. And you're like a 2-year-old kid growing up in Greece, where your parents are speaking Greek. There's Greek all over the place, and you're just learning little by little, one word at a time, one expression at a time. And you do it by immersion. Now, you may wonder, how are these live classes helping us? And I'll tell you, because it's hard for students to understand this because they're just in it. It's like kneading bread. It's like making bread. I don't know if any of you have made bread or if any of you eat bread. I know James eats potato chips. He might not actually eat bread. But for those of you, if you've ever made bread, you know that you take flour and yeast, right? And what do you do with them? How do you make the bread? What do you actually do? You have flour, you've got some eggs, maybe some salt, water, yeast. What do? You knead it, right? And think about how that works. You start out with the ingredients and you knead them and knead them and knead them. You just keep mashing them in and mixing them around, and you just keep going. You just keep mixing and mixing and mixing by pressing the dough and mixing it. And over time, all the ingredients are spread through the whole lump of dough, and you just keep kneading and kneading and kneading. Well, that's really one of the ways that we learn. We learn by just immersing ourselves in a study, and then just by talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. You might not even realize that you're learning more and more and more until you talk to someone who's not in our classes. And you realize that this stuff is not being kneaded into their brain, as it were. So it's just by this discussion and these little things I ask you to do. Transliterate this word. Tell me what this word means. Give me the part of speech. Just by spending time doing this, this is what we're doing. We're just kneading and kneading and kneading all this stuff into our head. All right. So that's all for today. I don't want to get into anything else. We've gone through 3 verses here. Most of you are not on these verses yet. We did 11 through 13, which is actually pretty good. We went through a lot of material, some new vocabulary, some simple vocabulary from previous lessons like prepositions and conjunctions and stuff like that, pronouns. But it just takes time. Bagel. Yeah, no. Is that how you spell bagel in English? Is that how you spell bagel with a U in it? Is that how you spell bagel? Or do you misspell it? No. All right. So we're through verse 13. Any questions about this? Practice the transliteration exercises. They're very important at this stage. Practice reading. Maybe next week we'll take some time to read. If you guys want to practice, I'd like to get someone other than, I think it was James last time and Henry that were reading last time. I'd like to try to get somebody else to work on it. So take some time to practice. Serena, you want to read? That's fine. Okay. Yeah, so I'd like to find someone other. We know James can do it well. Cecilia, you've been volunteered, so we'll see you next week and you can read for us. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'll drop out of Greek so I don't have to read. No, I'm never going to call on you to do things. It's all right. If no one wants to, we just won't do it. We'll just practice. We'll just practice together. So that's okay. Run, girl. All right. So next week, if anybody wants, I'll give you the opportunity. I'll ask if anyone wants to read. We'll practice reading a little bit. And again, like I always say, when I ask you to practice things, I know you don't know the language, so don't be silly, right? I'm here to help you. We'll joke around a little bit, and but it's just in good fun. But I'll help you to understand it. It's good to find what you're doing wrong. Sometimes you're just not aware of it until you do it in front of other people. So don't be afraid. I'll be positive, make fun of you a little bit, but then I'll help you. Okay. So that's all for today. Any other questions before we wrap up? Greek vocab course. I'm working on the next lesson. So I should have that available soon. I have to retype the lesson because you guys can't read the book. It's too crazy with symbols and stuff like that. So I've got to retype all that for you. I'll have a new Greek vocabulary lesson. Greek grammar, I'll continue to post those lessons, but like I said, focus on reading. You've got to build your vocabulary. You've got to build your vocabulary. Focus on Greek reading. I told you I've been slow and behind on everything because I've had a big paper due. I turned it in last night, so that's done. So I'm all done with that. And I can get working on this stuff now. I got nothing else to do. Okay. So that's it. I don't have anything else to talk about. If any of you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like to discuss about these studies, I'll be happy to hang around, but I'm going to cut things off now. And I'll see those of you who are leaving, I'll see you guys next time. God bless. Tomorrow we have English reading, writing, reasoning, and rhetoric. Get the Diet Coke. The Diet Coke disputation. It's a very good lesson. If you learn the lesson that I teach with the Diet Coke argument, you will become a really great student. It's a very, very important lesson. No. It's not about trying to win. There's no way that you can possibly win. There's no way. But the goal is for you to learn the lesson that I teach you about reasoning. It's very important. And if you get it, I think you'll really be helped with reasoning and thinking and writing. It's a very important lesson. It's not just relativism. It's not just my opinion. I don't just say like I think it's. I'm going to argue that it's healthier, that it's better than orange juice. And I didn't say Coke. I said Diet Coke, not Coca-Cola. I didn't say Coke. I said Diet Coke. There's no way to win the argument. It's impossible. Diet Coke. Diet Coke is better than orange juice. Tomorrow. Okay? So get yourselves ready, and we'll do that tomorrow. For now, if there's anything you want to ask about Greek or any of these classical studies, let's stick to classical studies. I'd really like to see some of you get really good in classical studies. Let me shut this recording off.